First thing that you need to understand is what you are really passionate about. And Steve Jobs said that once in one of his speech, that is so important to be passionate about what you do because it's going to spend most of your day working. Now, when it comes to how to continue to progress in cybersecurity, is once you identify what you really like to do, then continue to challenge yourself. Understand that it's important to not stay in your comfort zone for too long. If you are the smartest guy in the room or girl in the room, then there is a problem. How do you think AI is going to influence your field of activity?
Hello, Yuri. How are you today?
Pretty good. Thank you for having me.
Beautiful. And thanks for joining. And from which city are you speaking today?
I'm speaking from Dallas, Texas.
Amazing. Dallas, Texas. And how's the weather in Texas today?
Around 60 Fahrenheit, at least this morning. It's still early in the morning, but it will pick up. It will probably go to the 65 or something.
Wow. So not as cold as we have it in the north.
No, no. And that's one of the reasons why I like here, because I like more hot weather.
Yeah. Beautiful. So you literally have one or two weathers all year round instead of four.
Oh, no, we do have all four because in December it gets really cold during the winter because right now we are already on spring, basically. But during winter, it goes really cold, like zero.
Snow?
It does not often, but it can. It happens here and there, but it's not something that will happen every year.
Beautiful. Okay. So literally four weathers there. That's cool. Okay. Thank you for joining us. And how pumped are you to talk about tech leadership, especially from the cybersecurity perspective today?
Well, this is a topic that I'm all excited to talk about. So thank you for inviting me, and let's get started.
Oh, thank you, Yuri. Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the GLIT Podcast. And the GLIT Podcast is the Global Leadership, Innovation, and Technology Podcast. On this podcast, we talk about a lot of things about leadership, about innovation and business, and we also talk about technology. Today, we are having our technology track, and our guest today is Yuri Diogenes. Yuri is a principal product manager, product program manager at Microsoft. And what does that mean? That means he manages a lot of product managers. That is a lot of senior product managers. So invariably, there's a hierarchy. You have your product managers, you have the product managers and their managers, and then you now have the managers manager. So we have a very, very senior person on the call today. And who is Yuri? He's a learned fellow. He is a faculty on the BSc, which is the undergraduate and postgraduate degree at EC Council. EC Council is the provider of the Ethical Hacker License Penetration Tester certification. And he also has a master's from Utica University in the United States, Utica University, actually. And he's also running currently his PhD at Capital Technology University in the United States. That PhD is in cybersecurity leadership. He also has an MBA. So he also has spent about 18 years at Microsoft. That's a lifetime. And also he's an adjunct professor at the Trine University in the United States. He is very learned. He is a deep person, but he's also a very, very personable person. He's wonderful and has spent a lot of time working with Microsoft, driving strategy. And I must say, he's one of the most humble senior PMs at Microsoft that I've ever met. Today, we are fortunate to have him on the podcast, and I'm looking forward to an exciting opportunity to speak with Yuri. Welcome to the podcast again one more time, Yuri, and let's dive right. Thank you very much. So it's a very interesting time to be alive, Yuri, and there's a lot of things that is going on in the world today. While on one side, we have the conversations about artificial intelligence. On the other hand, we have a lot of conversations about what actual cybersecurity should look like. And we are also seeing a lot of cybersecurity warfare today. So warfare is no more with guns and bombs and rockets. We are also seeing a lot of intelligence or playing out in the cybersecurity space. And then on another distant end, we are beginning to see cyber data theft, espionage, data leaks, and a whole lot of stuff. So what are your thoughts on these various issues? I know there are a lot, but just give us a concise perspective of all these issues, and then we can now dive into them one by one.
This is, as you said, is a lot of things going on, and CISOs, they are overwhelmed about all these topics, right? There is a lot of things that are taking place. So they need to really have a better visualization about what needs to be prioritized. And this is the most important thing to think about, because if you start overthinking every single situation, you will not take actions to really protect your environment. So while there are a lot of things going on across the globe that are relevant to the cybersecurity space, the question is, what are the things that are relevant to my environment, and what are the things that I need to do right now to improve my environment secure posture? And CISOs, they need to have the right level of visibility into the risk. You mentioned data breach, which is a huge one. And the main problem with data breach is because CISOs and organizations, they do not have the right level of visibility of their data. They just don't know the type of data, because not all data are the same. Ideally, you should have data classification, but many organizations, they don't have data classification very well done. So they don't really know where is the sensitive data located. And that's why you need to start thinking about, okay, I need to protect my sensitive data. I need to make sure that I have visibility across all my assets, and then I can implement the security controls to reduce the likelihood of compromise. So that's the main important thing. And you need to do this in an environment that it is expanding across on-premise and multiple cloud providers, because we already seen a trend in the markets that a lot of companies, they are adopting a multi-cloud approach. They don't stick with only one cloud provider. They go to Azure, they go to AWS, GCP. They have different workloads, which makes even more challenging from the um, security perspective, because now you are dealing with multiple tools to perform an assessment and then give you a visibility across different states of the data distributed across different cloud providers. But you need to implement a solution that is able to combine all that into a single dashboard, give you the visualization that you need, do the data discovery to understand the data state and data sensitivity, and then classify that for you so that you can prioritize. That's point number one. Point number two is, we also seen a growth in threat actors that are jumping between clouds. So a threat actor may start an intrusion in one cloud provider and then jump to the next one, because there is a connectivity, there is a resource that has some sort of connection with another cloud. So the movement, the lateral movement between clouds, is something real and something that organization needs to be aware. So once again, they need to have the right set of tools to do that.
Thank you very much. That's amazing. So invariably, you need to have a kind of one view perspective that allows you to, first of all, you need to understand your data. And then once your data is properly structured, because at the end of everything, the bane of cybersecurity, I think, typically ends with data more often than not, data access. Now, in addition to that, you're saying that CISOs, tech leaders need to have one view of all their infrastructure that allows them to be able to see whatever is going on and know what they have where. Correct?
That's correct.
Beautiful. Thank you. So how does that now relate to a core cybersecurity strategy? What should be, like you mentioned, there's the necessity to understand your data, and there's the necessity to have the one view. But how does that translate now to the fundamentals in terms of the enterprise cybersecurity strategy?
Well, a lot of organizations, they are leaning to what is called cyber resilience. As a matter of fact, 9 in 10 security leaders, they report feeling vulnerable to attacks because their organization is not ready for that. So the idea of cyber resilience is to tackle basically 5 main points. Make sure that you embrace vulnerability as a fact of hybrid work. In other words, you need to understand that there will be workloads that are vulnerable, and you need to reduce the likelihood of compromise. You have to limit how far the attackers can compromise the environment. Ideally, if you think about the cyber kill chain, you should be able to identify a threat actor in the beginning of the compromise so that you can block and avoid the threat actor from doing anything more malicious. You need to elevate your cybersecurity into a more strategic business function. So it's not only about the technology, but also about the processes and procedures and the mindset of the company. Everyone needs to be involved on this. It needs to be a top-down approach. Everyone needs to be aware about the security policies and about the multiple factors of authentication. You need to push that across the company and train your users, because if the user is not trained, then you're going to have another problem. You need to recognize that you already have what it needs. What I mean by that is a lot of organizations, they want to jump into the bandwagon of new stuff. Oh, machine learning, AI, jump into everything without doing the fundamentals. And what we've seen is that basic secure hygiene still protects you from most of the attacks. So do not ignore the basics. Most likely you already have tools that you can utilize to elevate your security posture. Make sure to use it. Make sure that you have a strategy, a vision, a framework for that. For example, adopt zero trust across all your workloads. And zero trust is not one thing that you do one time. It's a journey, right? It's something that you start and you continue to do across your workloads. And start from the basics. As I said, the basics will still protect you from most of the attacks.
Beautiful, beautiful. I love your responses. They're very, very end-to-end and encompassing. Thank you very much, Yuri. That's nice to know. And when you now talk about this strategy, I know if you have a wonderful strategy and the people are not carried along or people are bypassing it, you are still going to be back to square zero. And one characteristic of cybersecurity is inconvenience. So what is your best recommendation for inconvenience, security training and awareness, and still core protection for products and services?
Yeah, security should not disrupt the business. Security should be an enabler. But the thing is, if you don't train your users to be aware about the security capabilities, about the security steps that needs to be taken, they will continue to see security as a blocker. Let's use the simple example of multi-factor authentication. If you just introduce MFA across the board for all your users, they'll be confused. They will have no idea why they are doing that. This is actually taking more time to log on, is more bureaucracy. But if you educate then about the risks that they will face without using this technology and what this technology is actually preventing from happening, they will be on the same page as you are, right? And this is important, education of the users so that they feel they are part of the team. They need to feel included in this strategy, and they need to feel like this also is important to protect them. because with the amount of users that are working from home and working remotely and all that, compromise can also be compromise users' infrastructure. So you need to make sure that they understand that these steps that you are introducing is not only important for the company to keep the company assets secure, but also to keep his or her information private and also secure. So it's a team effort. Education is super important. I think that a lot of companies they fail to proper communicate and train their user, and then at that point, security becomes a disruption because users they don't feel part of the strategy and they feel like they've been monitored or you are complicating their life and now they're not able to do their job.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you very much, Yuri. That's an amazing perspective. And in this case, so one other issue that we begin to see is that, and it's typically said that the culprits or the perpetrators of cyber threats are typically in the organization for months, sometimes for years. So they are drinking with you, they are taking coffee with you, they are monitoring your infrastructure, and their lateral movement across the infrastructure is usually not something that happens overnight. What are the best approaches for that detection? What are the best approaches for identification? And I'll give an example. When I was a DBA, database administrator, a lot of people used to have, and of course that came with me monitoring enterprise applications. A lot of people used to say, oh, what we need is to have an amazing operations center where we have dashboards and we have graphs and we have everything and we're doing real-time monitoring, which was good and is good. But I deferred slightly to say, you're not going to take your dashboard for lunch. So what if you have an outage while you're at lunch? Or over the weekend, you're not going to take your dashboards for the weekend. And the last thing any administrator wants to have is a mail from the operations monitoring team saying, please check, because it never comes in a friendly way. You understand? So I was more of an advocate for notifications. Notifications, which means if my drive is about to get full, if my system is out of memory, if I'm getting all this, let us also, while we have the dashboards, beautiful, but let us also have real-time notifications, because the notifications can go anywhere. If you have a smartwatch, you get notifications. If you don't want to wear a smartwatch, you have a phone, you can have your notifications, which means real-time, the tool flags whatever happens and it pushes it to you. And that was very, very helpful for me, because sometimes I wake up at 5:30 and I get a backup failed notification, or I get a disk full notification. So that helped me a lot. Now, in cybersecurity, that may slightly be different. Yes, you can have access notifications. You can have a couple of notifications like that. But at enterprise level, where you have 300 servers, 3,000 servers, 40,000 users, what are the best ways to have these threat hunting, threat detection, real time, and so that you would really not be caught flat-footed?
Well, first thing is the quality of your threat detection. What I mean by that is when you are monitoring an environment that has different types of workloads, for example, storage account, key vaults, virtual machines, Kubernetes, databases, you have different types of workloads. Your threat detection needs to be tailored for each workload, because each workload has a different threat landscape. So if you go to an approach where you have a generic threat detection mechanism, you're going to miss a lot of analytics. You're going to miss a lot of opportunities to identify threat actors in the beginning of the cyber kill chain, which means that they will be able to get in and you're not going to have the right level of visibility, because your threat detection does not really understand the threat landscape of that particular workload. So threat detection, the quality of the threat detection is the number one thing. every time that you want to protect a workload, you need to analyze, okay, what is really the threat landscape of this workload, and how can I have visibility across the entire cyber queue chain for this workload only. Once you have that, then you are starting a good place because you understand the all the phases of the attack, the reconnaissance, and everything, and you are able to trigger signals and then do something with the signal. And then that's where automation and response comes into play, because many things that you see can be automated. Let's say if you receive an alert that there is a RDP brute force attack taking place against one of your databases, then you can take an action, can automate an action to do something, to block the access from that IP address or something like that. So it's not only about detecting, it's also about rapidly respond. So reducing the gap between the detection and the response is really what you are looking for, because many times the problem is there is a detection and there is a long wait until something is done. So the response takes too much time. At that point, the threat act already moved to the next phase. And so now you are trying to catch something that is gone already. So the response is super important. And you were talking about notifications and things like that. All those things are important. But if you think about an enterprise level company, they should have a SOC 24/7, which means that there will be always continuous monitoring. But what really is going to accelerate things is automating some of those responses, creating playbooks for well-known types of attacks so that you can automate those things, and then you will not get a lot of alerts, or you're not going to get a lot of reactions because something has happened, because you need to also understand that there's a lot of false positive, so you have to triage all that. So using the resources that you have to do this auto triage and response can also make your life easier.
Beautiful. Thank you. I love that. Automation, automation, automation. Yes. And I love what you've actually said, because like you've said, the landscape for every silo of solutions or silo of infrastructure that you have varies. The silo for web is different. I mean, the landscape for web is different. The landscape for load balancers is different, for switches and for network devices, and all that is different. And more importantly, like you said, the automatic response, even if it's a temporary block, even if it's a temporary hold, that's fine. But what's the best approach to triage, especially for false positives?
Well, first you need to understand your own environment, which means you should have some sort of baseline to understand what is normal and expected. That way you have a higher level of certainty when you see an alert, and you can easily identify if that's expected or not. Of course, this becomes really challenging in large environments where a lot of things is happening. It becomes challenging also in a multi-cloud environment where users are provisioning new resources all the time. So triaging is an exercise. It's a continuous improvement exercise. Sometimes it's not an easy task. There is not really an easy button to say, oh, this is a false positive, because in larger environments, things are changing all the time. So it's a matter of be conscious that there will be false positives, and the idea is to not ignore alerts, because if you ignore alerts, if you are too self-confident that something is a false positive, you might miss something. So it is worth to validate, but it is also worth to ensure that you have tools that are able to do that for you. There are already tools in the market for threat detection that they will do the initial false positive gauge and try to provide you what they believe to be true positive. So that's important. Some tools, some threat detection tools available in the market, they already do that. Try to eliminate as much as they can the false positive, and then when they show the alert, is because they have a high level of certainty that this is a true positive.
Beautiful. Thank you. And do you care to mention some of these tools? Are you okay to mention some of these tools, maybe two or three of them?
Well, I'm talking when I talk about this, I'm talking about threat detection, and our cloud security solution is called Defender for Cloud at Microsoft, right? That's our cloud native application protection platform solution, CNAP. And in each workload that we monitor, we do have specific threat detections that were created by our security research team that really went deeply to understand what each workload requires when it comes to threat detection. They analyze the threat landscape across all the cybersecurity chain, and they map this to the MITRE framework attack. That way, they know exactly the phases in which the threat actor may be and trigger alert. So, from the quality perspective, we have one of the best qualities in the market when it comes to threat detection for the workloads that we monitor. And we do automatically do this false positive ratio because when we trigger an alert, we have enough evidence to say we have a high level of certainty that this is a true positive. So this also helps a lot with customers. The other thing that we do to help SOC analysts to triage is we do what we call the alert correlation, because many times threat actor will do multiple things, but all these things are part of the same attack campaign, which means that there will be multiple alerts for the same type of attack. When we identify those signals, we aggregate those alerts into one single security incident. So we trigger a security incident for the SOC analyst to analyze, and when he opens the security incident, there is a lot of alerts that were mapped there. So this saves a lot of time when it comes to the alert correlation.
Okay, so that's like the correlation is like a mini triage that correlates everything and brings them to one perspective across the services and devices. Beautiful.
Yep.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for this. And then as a CISO or CIO or tech leader, I know this is not news, but again, this landscape keeps changing because of new discoveries in technology. Where do we put the bring your own device, mobile devices? And of course, with the new innovations, we're beginning to see IoT and all those, and maybe robots in the near future. What is the best approach to handle these kind of things? So these are not servers, they are not people, but they are necessary devices that we use. How does one get to begin to handle all these things, and how does one begin to deal with them?
Well, BIOD is not, as you said, is not something new. Matter of fact, my first book about BIOD, I think I released in 2015 when we had the EMS, Enterprise Management Solution. So this is a subject that got really mature over the years, and nowadays we do have much more control over those devices. It's much easier to avoid devices that are not attested to the environment to get access to the data. So I think that the strategy is to embrace BYOD as long as you have the right set of tools and capabilities to do the correct attestation that the device is using, the policies that it needs to use in order to access company resources, that you have uh, that you are able to authenticate and validate multiple times using the principles of zero trust for remote devices. All those things need to come to play. So zero trust is big here because you are constantly validating the user's credentials. So it's not only about validating during the initial logon, but in every single access to every resources, you are validating the access and validating the level of access. So that's very important. When it comes to IoT, IoT is a challenge for many organizations. There are tools available in the market, of course, to embrace IoT and monitor those IoT devices. And at Microsoft, we have Defender for IoT that is able to monitor devices that fits this category of device. The thing is about implementing policies and controls that will spread across all your assets. If the asset is a server, if the asset is a device, if the asset is a router, if the asset is, your refrigerator that has an IP address and has a way to communicate, everything needs to be part of this policy in a seamless manner and using the same core foundation. And in this case, the core foundation will be zero trust. Because if you apply the zero trust principles across all the devices, these new technology to access company assets.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, Yuri. Thank you, Yuri. Now, we've spoken a lot. We've done a lot about everything in general. I now want to go a little bit deeper into some more recent trends that we've had and that I know will be a kind of challenge for people today, which brings us to two critical issues, which is AI and privacy. AI and privacy. So I would not start with AI per se. I will start with privacy. What are, as a leader, I know we are already aware of GDPR, PCI DSS, HIPAA, and all those ISO 27001, and all those relevant certifications. But how does one balance the need for data security with privacy and across multiple industries? I could be in enterprise today, tomorrow I could be in manufacturing, or during COVID, I could have been working at a pharmaceutical where Pfizer, AstraZeneca, and Moderna now had a lot of things to do. And of course, it was a race to who could get out a vaccine first. Now, if we had another organization or another country that wanted to get access to the recipe or a Coca-Cola story, Coca-Cola versus Pepsi story, now, how do we ensure that in all this, we are still ensuring that we have data privacy and we are still having compliance while innovating and doing all the necessary things that we need to do?
Definitely, privacy is a subject that it could be one episode of your podcast on its own. And in many companies, you have a different team just to deal with privacy. In some organization, privacy is very separate from core cybersecurity because they see privacy as its own domain, which makes a lot of sense. But in general, the first thing that needs to be done is to identify your organizational privacy posture. What I mean by that is find and understand and resolve potential privacy risks like data handling, data transfer, data oversharing. All those things needs to be addressed. But first, you need to identify, because it goes to the same principle of data breach, right? You don't know what you don't know. So for you to really tackle the privacy challenge, you need to understand all the variants and all the elements that deals with privacy within your organization. So just this exercise on its own is very challenging because there are many departments on your organization. There are different line of business, and the privacy requirements is different for each one of them, right? Maybe there is one side of your organization that deals with credit card information from customers. So are we talking about PCI there, and how those workloads are PCI compliant? So you need to understand the entire landscape and entire assets that you have. Then you need to process those requests, understand how to automate this discovery at scale. Once again, visibility. Everything starts with visibility. So how can I discover all the assets that has potential privacy risk related to it? How can I discover and understand if there is a server that belongs to the Department X that is using a database that contains customers' information, and that information should be encrypted, for example? That's the real challenge. And once you go through that phase, then you can start working on applying the proper mechanism to secure and make sure that those resources are compliant with whatever privacy standards you are using.
Thank you so much, Yuri. And now let's move on to AI. There's a lot of layers in this AI box. But I'll try not to go too far because, again, like you said, privacy is a whole conversation. And then AI and cybersecurity is another whole conversation on its own. But let's see how we can do that in a very short period. So really, as companies begin to adopt AI, for starters, generative AI, but more advanced engineering organizations will do much more than generative AIs. For example, a Mercedes-Benz that has robots doing car assembly, or for example, a Boeing or Airbus with airplane manufacturing, which is also assembly. And then, of course, PC companies and all sorts of companies will do a lot with robots. What should the initial, if you can make it like in a nutshell, phase one? Okay, we want to start cybersecurity. What should we think about? And then we want to start artificial intelligence. What should we think about? Phase one. Level two, we've started AI. What should we be looking at? And then what should we be considering in the future? If you can do something like that for us, a kind of maturity journey for an organization that wants to use AI from possibly a cybersecurity perspective, that might be really helpful.
Yeah. Well, this is, again, as I said, this is a really broad topic because AI starts with ethics, AI starts with transparency, and deals also with privacy. So it touches a lot of points, right? Now, when it comes to cybersecurity, I think that AI can be highly leveraged for defenders, which means that how can I use AI to help me protect my assets? How can I use AI to better understand my secure posture? That's because if we think about the secure posture lifecycle, we're talking about protection, detection, and response. So it's a continuous cycle of protecting, detecting, and respond. AI will fit in each one of those. So I can embed AI as part of my protection. I can embed AI as part of my detection and response. The most bang for the bucket, let's put this way, will be initially leveraging AI to improve your protection. Because nowadays, with the amount of things that you need to do to protect the environment, it's really hard on many organizations to expedite everything. They are super busy. They don't have enough manpower to remediate all the things that are open. They need to prioritize what is the right thing for their environment. So AI will going to play a big role there to not only identify what is really important in your environment, but also how can AI help me to mitigate? Because think about it. If when I'm dealing with an environment that is multi-cloud, maybe I have one professional in my environment that he is really good in Azure, but he has no idea about GCP or AWS. So it's going to take me time to train him to understand better AWS and GCP, but I also need to remediate a bunch of vulnerabilities in those environments right now. So how can I leverage AI to expedite those things, to remediate those things for me, right? So that's where AI plays. So this is something that is going to be extremely valuable for organizations to leverage AI to help improve the secure portion of the environment. That will be phase one, right? If you think purely from the cybersecurity perspective, how can I use AI right now? That will be phase one. Because at the end of the day, you need to elevate the secure posture first, and then you need to work also on your detection. And then detection will be phase two. How can I use AI to help me detect new threats? And that's a whole different ball game, right? It's how can AI help me understand the unknowns that are happening on my environment and identify if those things are suspicious, are malicious, and which actions should I take to prevent that issue to become really a breach or not.
Thank you very much. I like that. So plays a role in protection, plays a role in detection, plays a role in remediation and resolution. I mean, it's a no-brainer because there's really no way, if you are doing automation, that you cannot bring AI into the mix, and that's really, really interesting. Thank you so much,
Yeah,
Yuri.
this is just to complement. This is the baseline, as you said. The companies will start to move to another phase, which is they will start to develop applications that use AI. So there is already the concern of, okay, if you are an organization and you have developers and your developers are starting to develop code that leverage AI, how can we protect them, right? Because you have to think about that threat actors may try to compromise also the model. So how can you protect those models, right? So that's a next phase, next step. I would say is how can an organization safely start developing applications using AI and ensure that this development life cycle is secure.
Beautiful. Thank you. I like that. And based on what you just said, could you give a 1-minute primer on what's the best way today to approach generative AI deployments in an enterprise? Today, I would want to use it. I could want to use Gemini or Bard or ChatGPT, and a typical approach for an organization is to say, we don't want that tool in this place, and then just block it off. But the sad news, or the good news, is that employees are like water. They will always find their way. So if you don't let them use it in the organization, you block it, they will use it on their devices. They can still take pictures with their phones. They can still do a lot of stuff. So what do you recommend as a quick way to wisely enable generative AI in an organization? And just summary, basically.
Well, first of all, the idea of that you just mentioned of blocking everything is not very smart, because AI, just like back in the day, machine learn, just like back in the day, IoT, all those things are new, and organization are very sometimes they don't like this new stuff because they don't know what's gonna happen, and that's fine. You know, it's important to have policies in place to embrace those technologies. But the point is, you need to embrace those technologies. You need to embrace how you will enable. There are a lot of standards already being created. As a matter of fact, when it comes to the United States, there is even an executive order that was issued by President Biden not too long ago, actually, about some of the standards for AI safety and security. This executive order is available in the whitehouse.gov website, and it talks about some of the requirements, requirements for developers that wants to use AI, requirements for standards and tools to use AI safely. So I would say you can start uh, from that point of view. It's a very extensive document, and this document gives you a really good overview about how to secure, enable what is called trustworthy AI adoption. So, and this is very agnostic, right? It's not really connected to company A, company B, or company C. It has core standards, guidelines that should be followed.
Okay, beautiful. Lastly, I want to ask about the cybersecurity career. You have had a wonderful career so far, and of course, you are a practitioner right there in the field, doing great stuff, working with one of the leading, biggest cybersecurity companies in the world. You are a faculty whereby you teach students, and also you are a continuous learner. And most importantly, you have also reshared your knowledge, not only in the classroom, but you've also published a lot of books. You're a published author, a renowned published author. Now, it's difficult for people to have all this in one lifetime. So you've literally lived 4 lives in one. But at the, I wouldn't say basics, because it's good for people to push themselves. What are some advices that you have for anyone who wants to pursue a career in cybersecurity? And because, yes, everybody knows that I can easily go learn hacking, I can easily go learn CH or whatever, but I want you to take it more than just the basics. I want you to take it to a fairly advanced level, because a lot of people would think, okay, once I write the CEH, I become a PCI AP auditor, I do this, I'm good. Or I do a cybersecurity master's, I'm good, which are not bad anyway. But how can you stand out, apart from the regular character port stuff? But what are the hints and tricks and secrets that a cybersecurity professional could embark upon to make him be unique and stand out in the marketplace?
Yeah. So using this opportunity to also mention that I wrote an entire book about this, Building Your Career in Cybersecurity by Pearson. The
Is that
book was for, say it again?
is that the book right behind you? The one at the
Yes,
top?
this one. Yeah,
Beautiful.
this one.
Okay. All right. So there you see, please continue.
Yeah, so this book talks about it creates the roadmap, because as a professor at the university, I get this question from students a lot. And I've been teaching here in the US for the past almost 9 years. And there was a lot of questions, and I'm like, I should write a book about this, because those questions are keep coming. So I wrote this book with this intent to clarify the career path, the opportunities, what it takes, what it needs. But if I want to summarize the book in a few words, I would say, first thing that you need to understand is what you are really passionate about. And it has nothing to do with cyber. It has to do with what you like to do. And the reason why I say that is because if you are happy doing what you do, the likelihood that you're going to grow naturally in your career is very high, because you are passionate, you do things because you care, because you love doing it, you have fun doing it. So that's the secret, most likely. And Steve Jobs said that once in one of his speech, that is so important to be passionate about what you do, because it's going to spend most of your day working. Most of your day is going to be working or sleeping. So you better do something that you love doing. That's the main point. Now, when it comes to how to continue to progress in cybersecurity, is once you identify what you really like to do, then continue to challenge yourself. Understand that it's important to not stay in your comfort zone for too long. If you are the smartest guy in the room or girl in the room, then there is a problem, because you are probably not stretching yourself, you're probably not growing. You achieve that status where you feel comfortable on what you do, and you actually start to stagnate. You're not going to push yourself. So that feeling of being uncomfortable here and there is a good feeling. You need to be comfortable in uncomfortable situations. And that's what is going to differentiate you from other people, because a lot of time when people get uncomfortable, they either quit or they stay quiet. They don't really shine. They don't really make a big impact in stressful situations. And that's really what differentiates many professionals. How can you deal with stress in such a way that you are making an impact, not only in the organization that you are working for, but also in your career? So that's important, right? And last, identify and understand that each individual has its own path. You don't need to go where everyone is going just because everyone is going. There's a lot of people that as soon as a new term, a new buzzword comes up, they were like, oh, I need to go that direction. It was like this with DevSecOps. Everyone was like, oh, DevSecOps is the next thing. Let's go everyone to DevSecOps. Well, is it really for you? Why are you changing your career trajectory just because everyone is changing? Be skeptical, analyze the situation, see if this is what you really want to do or like. Because maybe it's a buzzword. You need to be aware, you need to understand what it is, but you don't need to change trajectory just because everyone is going there. So that would be my 3 piece of advice.
Thank you for this, Yuri. That is very, very deep. And it's amazing that you didn't say, go do this, go do that, go study this, and go study that. You've gone to the real core fundamentals. And I guess anyone who is able to click on those fundamentals is able to get it right. And it will also drive the right passion and the right desire. Okay, thank you so much. And we are approaching the end of our session. We have a ritual that we usually do at the end of the session, which is very simple. The guest leaves a comment for somebody, for the next guest to comment upon, and then the guest also, you respond to the previous guest's comment, and then you drop a comment for the next guest to respond upon. The last guest was an expert in strategy and geopolitics, and her question was really, really deep. I will modify it slightly so that it's contextual, and I would say, how do you apply the concept of geopolitics to cybersecurity? What is your perspective of geopolitics and cybersecurity? And what is geopolitics? That's politics of countries, politics of international relations, politics of people interacting across borders. So what is your perspective of geopolitics, and how can we relate it to cybersecurity? And then you also drop a challenge for the next guest. And it doesn't have to be related to this question that you are responding to.
Yeah, so what is interesting about geopolitics and cybersecurity is that threat actors, they kind of act according to the current themes that is happening across the globe. So if you think about, let's go back to 2020 when COVID happened. One of the things that we notice in our signals back in March 2020 is that the amount of attacks using the keyword coronavirus done via phishing mail grew exponentially in March, and we didn't see anything like that in January, February, but did we have that huge spike in March? And why was that? Well, because threat actors, they are constantly monitoring those geopolitics events that are happening, the elections in US, the elections in Brazil. They are constantly monitoring those events, and they are creating campaign based on those events, and then just send it out. And most of the time, phishing mail is a good way to start because it deals with social engineering, which means that it deals with hacking people's mind by enticing them to do something because they are curious about that topic and they see a very well crafted email and they're like, oh, I want to know more about that. And this is what happened with the coronavirus at that time, that people were curious to understand what this coronavirus was about and everything. So they exploited the curiosity of the entire nation across the globe, different nations. It's funny because when we look at the data, some nations were more affected than others. So they do their own research to understand what that theme means to different countries and how they can tailor their attack campaigns to each segment of society, of nations. So it's very amazing that the cybercrime is well organized to a point where the geopolitics totally impact their own campaigns. So that is what you need to be mindful about it.
Good, beautiful. And what is your challenge for the next guest?
Uh, I don't know who is going to be the next guest. His or her specialty. So I will just drop the question to ask, how do you think AI is going to influence your field of activity?
Beautiful. Simple, but deep. Very
Yep.
simple, deep. Thank you very much, Yuri. Thank you for joining. And any final words before we finish?
No, really, just want to say thanks for inviting me. It was a really good conversation, very broad and great questions. I hope that your audience enjoy.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for coming on board today. We've had Yuri Diogenes, who is a principal product manager or program manager at Microsoft. That's a big title, and he's also a faculty at the University of CH University and another university in the US. And also he is a published author. As you can see, he's the author of the Building a Career in Cybersecurity, Cybersecurity Attack and Defense Strategies, and a couple of certification books, as you can see on the shelf right behind him. You'd see the list of all the books he's written in the show notes below. And also you'll get a link to his profile where you can follow him and connect with him. Thank you very much. It's been an insightful experience today on the podcast. We've spoken about cybersecurity, a lot of stuff that every tech leader needs to think about when talking about cybersecurity. That is especially when you move away from the operational day-to-day activities, the things you need to have in place for your cybersecurity journey to be well planned, the things you need to have in place to have a great posture. And I believe that this is going to contribute to the wealth of knowledge that you use in your organization. Thank you so much, Yuri, for joining us. And it's wonderful having you again. And we hope to have you very soon. Thank you so much, Yuri.
Thank you.